What are the opportunities and challenges you see? And let's start with the opportunities, because people have to eat. It's a very enticing business to go into. But from your experience, with your background, what's catching your eye?
Well, for our brand, I think it's more of the Visayas region and more expansion in Mindanao. When we stopped our expansion during the pandemic time, we were already going into that path, right? And then Southeast Asia, as I mentioned earlier.
Any particular country in Southeast Asia? Or?
Well, for us, what would really be aligned with our vision for the brand in terms of flavors, in terms of the similarities of the market, would be Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand.
Interesting.
Those are the top 3 countries that would be of interest in terms of demographics, economic growth, and in terms of the opportunities for Filipino brands to really go there.
Sure.
Some markets are really more advanced than the Philippines, but it's very interesting also to look into. Like Taiwan, I always look at Taiwan and Korea for trends and other benchmarks. For the malls, particularly Thailand is very interesting.
That's really interesting that Philippine homegrown brands are going international. What do you need? Do you need government help? Do you need foreign investors? Do you need something else? What will it take for you to go ahead and push through with something like that?
I can only speak from my personal experience, because most of my trips abroad are either sponsored by the company who I worked for before, or personally funded, because I really invest in continuing to learn about the industry globally.
You're doing your own market survey.
I've seen a lot of government-initiated conferences locally. I think if restaurant entrepreneurs would be given the opportunity to be part of a trade visit to other countries, and it would be recognized that the restaurant segment in the Philippines is something that could attract and also export, import and export its talents, its brands,
systems,
expertise, systems. We're very much known for how Filipinos can easily learn the technology. We're moving into an AI and robotic period. So I think if our government agencies can help the Filipino restaurant operators to be more equipped in terms of how these trends would affect the industry, and how it would also prevent job loss, because the most prone area would be the kitchen. If you're going to replace equipments with robotics, in the US I've seen the kitchens without cooks.
Oh wow,
already,
really?
And servers, people ordering digitally even when dining. So I think all of these things need to be provided for in terms of just access and opportunities for learning, as I've said earlier.
So right now, I take it you're not invited. Is there like an organized mission by maybe DTI or some other government? Do they go to your group and say, we're going to say Taiwan or Japan or maybe Middle East? They don't have that yet, or
not as institutionalized as needed
so
by the industry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not proportionate to the size of the industry.
I see. I get what you mean.
And its contribution to the economy, I would say.
You mentioned Indonesia as one of the markets that you're looking at. I heard that halal offers a lot of opportunities as well, billion-dollar opportunity. Is that something, because chicken, halal, is that something that you're looking at?
I think that's one of the reasons why, one of our earliest business development plan was Zamboanga. Because we wanted to cater to the market of our Muslim brothers also, and to get a gauge of the dynamics that might be happening in Indonesia and Malaysia.
So test that out in Zamboanga.
So if you succeed in Zamboanga, then
you're more confident.
You're more familiar. You're more confident to enter the other Muslim markets.
Can I ask you about something in the news lately? The food waste has become one of the issues. I think Phil Rice came out with a statement last week that there's a lot of food waste in the restaurants. People leave maybe an average of 2 spoonfuls of rice per serving, and it doesn't sound much, but if they total it, in a year, it comes out to something like 385 metric tons of wasted rice, right? I know you focus mainly on chicken, but is that a concern? Is that something that you guys think about? Maybe if not terms of the social impact, but maybe on the impact of your bottom line. Is there a solution for it, you think? What do you think?
Well, I totally agree that the impact of food waste is not just in terms of the economics of the restaurant, but more so because some restaurants would just pass it on to the consumers.
Yeah, that's right.
Pricing,
Yeah.
I think it's also we have to look into or to just give some thought about all the concepts that do unlimited.
Only rice.
Eat all you can.
Yeah. Do you think there should be some maybe regulation on that?
Well, it cannot be. It should not be regulated.
Should not
but
be.
I think it should be the mindfulness of the operator to consider that the supply is not really endless. It's limited.
Is there something that can be done for maybe maybe on the consumer side?
Yes.
Maybe a change of mindset, for.
Well, a lot of it can be
Filipino.
from the operator side.
Also,
because,
okay.
as I mentioned earlier, cross-utilization. Even in the US, they're doing it now in the Western countries because they're now cognizant of the fact that you just don't throw away anything in the garbage can.
Takes us money, right?
Yeah, let's say, for example, produce.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you just throw away the leaves of the celery and you just choose the prime parts of the celery. Now
Right.
they understand.
They use everything,
To use everything for soup,
Yeah.
to use cross-utilization.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the important aspects that culinary schools can help in terms of educating the chefs and all the culinary practitioners to have that in mind.
Yeah.
The bigger suppliers are also working on that. I've heard Unilever talk about that in one of the bigger conferences.
Sure.
So the whole industry, not just here in the Philippines, is talking about it. But in terms of the consumers, I totally agree with you. It needs to be an awareness program because
Sure.
you cannot force people to
Yeah.
stop eating only or to stop patronizing restaurants which they feel have value.
Right.
So-
it's a come on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's been an effective come on. But what is? Can you maybe clue me in on some of the discussions among restaurant owners about the food waste problem? Is that something that's talked about a lot, or maybe just on the fringe, or because our discussion has been survival of the business, right? Is that a big cost, or is there maybe some other program that you guys have been talking about?
Yeah, the pandemic has definitely put a spotlight on it.
I see.
Because
I see.
during the pandemic, the reality was you realize that what was very available in the past 2019 and earlier is not readily available when a pandemic hits, right?
Because of supply chain problem.
There's a heightened awareness
Yeah.
of the importance of knowing that supply chain should not be treated as an endless supply of things,
Yeah.
an endless availability of different things. So culinarily, a lot of restaurants adjusted their menus, made it more compact.
Yeah.
Because if you put out a big menu,
Yeah.
even if you don't sell a lot of the other items, you still have to prep it.
Yeah,
And
you have to keep the inventory.
Yeah, that's where the wastage comes in.
I see.
Even before it's cooked. So
I see.
I would say that it has improved in terms of awareness, and a lot of people are doing something about it in the industry already.
What are other issues that you guys are talking about? I mean, in terms of opportunities and challenges. Is Christmas something you look forward to, and then what does 2024 look to you?
For this year, a lot of people, I'm sure, are really looking forward to Christmas because 2023 has been very challenging. Q1, Q2, we thought that it
You
was
were
just,
saying something. It's worse now than 2021 or 2023.
yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah,
Okay.
in a lot of ways.
That's odd. Yeah.
Because the latter part of 2022, the rent was, brought back to normal.
I see. Okay.
And then inflation came in, and of course it affected. Factored in also is what aggravated it was the global demand escalated, so supply was affected as well.
Yeah.
In our case, poultry supply.
I was going to ask you about that because, I mean, is localization something that you look at? Because for your particular restaurant, I mean, you import your chicken, right? Because we're talking about the dynamics of the chicken suppliers here in the country. They have to prep it for you because you serve wings. Whereas if they sell to, let's say, people like me, we buy the whole chicken and we prepare it at home, and right,
and most of the time you get it chilled. No
Yes.
need for them to freeze. No need for them to cut it up. So,
but localization, is that something you guys think about, or what do you think about
I think that's something that, going back to your earlier question, I think that's where government can also step in and provide support for the local poultry industry. Aside from the poultry industry, making sure that the other processes leading towards being consumed in the restaurant. Because during the pandemic, I highlighted it in one of my conversations in our organization and even during webinars that during the pandemic, we saw the bigger role of the restaurants in terms of not just being a business, but also as a essential social institution.
Sure.
Providing convenience, helping people, giving people access to our convenient way, especially now that people are not too keen on cooking on their own.
It's not just a luxury, right?
It's
sometimes essential.
So, having said that, I think that the support of the government can come into providing more supply for basic, especially for protein. Because if you think of it, we don't have a beef industry or a cattle industry that can provide us the beef, right? It's almost all imported. So, and then you have a pork supply now that's have been troubled for the past few years because of the swine
fever.
So that puts a lot of pressure in the poultry sector. So maybe a review on the laws also in terms of the trade agreements. Some countries are not allowed to export chicken to the Philippines. And I think those old laws can be reviewed now, especially with the ASEAN integration. Because we know in the ASEAN region, there's a lot of supply of chicken, but we don't have access to that. So maybe it's an updating of the trade agreements and the laws so that we can really support the restaurants, which I think even during the pandemic and up to now, we still grow by numbers in terms of the number of restaurants being opened every year.
Right. And you know this, but I want to hear you say it. But why is that support important? Let's say maybe how many people did you employ when you started, and how many do you have now? Maybe that's one way to gauge the importance, right? But
for us, it was a more creative. Just for context, our restaurants are typically smaller. Because when the landlords were inviting us to the malls, that's one of the things that we were afraid of, the rent. So we adjusted our model to a smaller one. So a small restaurant like ours, which is a fun casual restaurant, full service but not casual dining.
I see.
It employs 9 to 12 people.
Okay.
So if you have,
average,
in our case, if you have 50 branches, 40 branches, it multiplies, right?
Times 9 to 12.
And also the entrepreneurial opportunities that you share with your franchisees.
Right. And then, of course, you support, your suppliers.
And landlords.
Well, Rommel, it's been very interesting to talk to you. A lot of things I've learned this episode. Thank you for your time. But before we go, maybe you'd like to leave our audience with a message?
Well, for me, number one, thank you very much to you, sir, for inviting me over. SMNI, salamat po. And I always appreciate a platform where we can talk about the industry so people can understand and appreciate the industry in itself and how it impacts the economy and how it serves the people. I'm blessed to have been, part of the industry for almost 40 years now. And all of these learnings, experiences, I share every Tuesday. The Resto Coach on Facebook every Tuesday night, 8:30 to 9:30. As I always, encourage people to, if you're really serious into going into business, there's no harm in listening to something, even if you don't want to look at my face and just listen to it.
And it's free.
While eating, while doing something else, or in the car. It's on Facebook. It's also on YouTube. The Resto Coach. And please visit our restaurants and other restaurants for that matter. We really need your dine-in support. Delivery is fine, but it's not as profitable. Sorry, Grab and Food Panda, my partners for delivery, but that's the reality. So we invite you to dine in. The restaurants need your help up to now. Some people would think it's, post-pandemic, but restaurants still need our help.